Hello class, welcome to the final segment in the week 5 material, and in this final segment we're going to be introducing the idea of a Python dictionary and talk a little bit about how those actually work. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right into it. So when we were looking at lists, we were looking at something that was using the square brackets. Now we're going to take a look at something that makes use of the curly brackets or the braces as they're sometimes referred to. And the whole idea behind a dictionary, the reason kind of comes from the idea of a dictionary itself. So if you think about what what is conceptually referred to as a dictionary, you go into a dictionary, look up a word, and then find the definition of that word. And a Python dictionary is sort of structured in the same way, where you have a whole bunch of entries in the dictionary that have a word element and a corresponding definition element. Those are two unofficial terms that I like to use to sort of illustrate what exactly is going on here. So in this case, I have I have a dictionary again denoted by the braces here, and each individual entry, much like a list, each individual entry in a list is separated by commas, and each individual entry in a dictionary is also separated by commas. So this entire thing at the top here would be an entire entry in the dictionary, and then this would also be another entry. This would be another entry in the dictionary, and then this would be another entry in the dictionary. And you'll also notice how each entry in the dictionary has a colon here, and that's how the computer knows which is the word element and which is the definition element. So on the left of the colon, again, each individual entry has a colon, and the value or the item to the left of the colon represents the word element, and the value to the right of the colon represents the definition element. And that's one way of storing information, also in something called a dictionary. Now the question becomes, how do you actually get that information out? So the way that you get information out of a dictionary is, first of all, you type the name of the dictionary that you're interested in. Again, nothing special about this variable name that we have defined here on line 2. This could be X, this could be Y, this could be yada yada yada. It could be anything at all that we want, as long as we're consistent throughout our program. But if we want to pull information out of a specific dictionary, we type the name of that dictionary out, and then just like a list, we type a set of square brackets. Not like that. We type a set of square brackets, but unlike a list, we don't necessarily put a number in the brackets here. We put in the value of the word element that we're really interested in. And when we put a value of a word element in a dictionary, then the end result that we get back from that is going to be the definition element, the corresponding definition element. So again, looking at the dictionary up at the top here, the very first entry in this case is just programming being the word element, and then the corresponding definition element would be this string right here that just reads the action or process of writing computer programs. So what we do on line 7 here is we're telling the computer to go into this dictionary called My Dictionary, find an entry whose word element is programming, which we can see on the screen here would be this, and then give me back the definition element, which is the item that appears to the right of the colon here. So in the end, this print statement on line 7 here is just going to print out this string, which again is the definition element of the word element that we put in the brackets here. So it will just simply print out the word element corresponding to programming, which is the action or process of writing computer programs, which is literally a dictionary entry. But if we want to confirm that result, we can just simply launch the program, and you can see in the end, the program does in fact print out the action or process of writing computer programs, which again is the definition element that corresponds to this word element that we have in the brackets here. And if we go into the dictionary ourselves, we can see there is an entry in the dictionary whose word element matches up with this, and the corresponding definition element, which is to the right of the colon, is what we get back as the end result of what we have here on line 7 within the print statement. And if we want to demonstrate that for each individual entry, so in this case, here we're telling the computer to go look for a word element called phone number, or this specific character sequence, this specific string, and we want to get back the definition element. And if we look inside this dictionary called My Dictionary, you can see we have this word element called phone number, and then the definition element of that would be 8675 space 867 space 5309, including the hyphens. or maybe a more proper way of reading that out would be 8675309. For those of you who are fans of music from that area, from that era, you will hopefully understand where that comes from. But my singing aside, or attempt at singing aside, that's going to be the end result that we get back from putting this specific value in the brackets here. Again, look for a word element called phone number and give me back the corresponding definition element, which should be just this character sequence, much like what we had before. So you can see we do in fact pull that information out. And we can do the same thing with each individual entry, each other entry that appears in the dictionary. So in this case, SPC, that string corresponds to this word element, and we get back the corresponding definition element, which should print out the storm prediction center. You can see we do in fact get that result by running the print statement on line 9. And then similarly, if we go to the print statement on line 10, my dictionary with this string in the brackets means look for a word element called this in the dictionary and give me back the definition element, which in this case would be the string tornado warning, which appears to the right of the colon. And I just saved it before I ran it, but that's perfectly fine. It actually saves automatically when you run it, so it's inconsequential. Now, also, sort of like what we had with lists, you can actually plug variables into the brackets. So let me actually go to the topmost print statement, and here I'm going to make a variable called x, and that's going to hold on to a string. And if we want to, we can actually put that variable inside the brackets here. And it's sort of like what we had with a list. If you have a variable, again, we know it's a variable because this has no quotes around it. If you put a variable inside of the brackets, it's going to look up what the value of that variable is, plug it into the brackets, and then the program will act on that value in the brackets like it would as if you just spelled out the value, like as if you just explicitly spelled out the value. So in this case, X is holding on to a string called programming. So that's how the computer knows what value to put in the brackets here. So look for a variable called X, take its current value, and plug it into the brackets here. So this is essentially going to plug programming into the brackets here. And by plugging programming into the brackets of a dictionary, we're going to get back the definition element that corresponds to that word element that we put in the brackets. So in essence, the computer is going to look up what the value of X is, which we can see is programming, plug programming into the brackets, just like what we had before. That's going to give us back the definition element if there's a word element called programming in the dictionary, which there is. And again, that's this really long string. And that's going to be the end result that we get back from that print statement on line 9. So you can put variables inside the brackets here. Just make sure that the variable you put inside the brackets is an entry that actually appears in the dictionary somewhere. In fact, if we want to demonstrate what happens if you try to access an entry that isn't in the dictionary, there's actually a very specific error message that appears when that happens. So here, this case, I'm telling it to look for a word element called X in quotation marks as opposed to looking up the value of X here. So if I try to do that, you can see there's no word element called X in the dictionary here. So there's no definition element to give back. And because that fails, you're going to get this error message. And it's a remarkably brief error message that is also very, very specific to the specific issue that arises. Key error, and then this right here will tell you the word element that it did not find in the dictionary. So if you put something in the brackets here that does not appear in the dictionary, then you will get key error, and then it will tell you what item it did not find in the dictionary. Also, something that's very important to highlight as it pertains to dictionaries. Now, in a regular list, if you want the very first entry in a list, you would simply put a 0 in the brackets. This will not work on a dictionary, and the reason why is because whatever you put in the brackets, it's going to try to find a word element that matches up to what's in the brackets here. And if we go to the dictionary, we can see there is no word element that has the number 0, and there's no definition element to link it up to. So the computer is going to go into my dictionary, try to find a word element that is just 0, which it can't find. So it's just going to give me that same error message, key error. It did not find 0 anywhere in the dictionary. So unlike a list where this would give you the very first entry of the list, if you try 0 in the brackets of a dictionary, that is not necessarily going to give you the very first entry in the dictionary. You can make this work. So I could change this word element down here to 0, in which case now there is a word element that does match up with what I have in the brackets here, and I would get back the corresponding definition element, which in this case is a string that says tornado warning. So now that does work. Now there actually is a word element in the dictionary for the computer to find, but what I had earlier doesn't work because there's no word element that is given by what's in the brackets here. In the dictionary that we've just had strings on the right-hand side of the colon. That is, all the definition elements have been strings, but the definition elements can be any data type at all. It could be another list, it could be a numerical value, it could be a string, it could be anything at all. Anything can appear on the right-hand side of the colon. On the left-hand side of the colon, ideally what you want to use is just a regular number or a string. Probably the best thing would be to use a string because strings are more unique than numbers, and generally speaking. There's a lot more strings out, possible string combinations out there than there are numbers. But that's going to do it for this segment on dictionaries. And with that, that's going to do it for the week 5 units. So with that, I will see you all in the week 6 unit starting next week.